Welcome to How We Grow, an essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business with advice and insights from the best in the biz, with your host, Lynell Gordon. Welcome to How We Grow, the Vacation Rental Show. I am very excited today. I'm joined by someone who's worked across vacation rentals, hotels, and hospitality for 25 years and counting. Adam Knight is with us, and he is a speaker. He's a podcaster, the CEO and co-founder of Recreation Vacation Rentals in Seattle. He's joining me today, and I'm going to put him on the spot and ask him to share with us, just to start out, like 3 of the most important principles he's learned concerning hospitality. Oh, and by the way, Adam's just been named one of the 2024's most notable leaders by the International Hospitality Institute. And that's impressive. So congratulations, Adam.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on, Lynell. So putting me on the spot right out of the gate, 3 tips for hospitality. I'm going to give you 4.
Beautiful.
I'll over-deliver here. And I'm actually going to give you the 4 pillars for how we've built recreation vacation rentals. And it's very simple. We call it the 4 C's. Cleaning, comfort, communication, and consistency. Cleaning, comfort, communication, consistency. It's the 4 C's. It's very easy to remember. And effectively, what it does is that gives us a lens by which to look at every decision that we make in the company. If it's concerning operations, sales, owner relations, is it going to, make the cleanliness of the homes better? So, if we're bringing on a new cleaner, for example, or we want to roll out a new process, or we want to bring on a new tool or some way of communicating with the team, is it going to help make the cleanliness of the home better? Which some would argue that that's the most important thing when it comes to vacation rentals. And it's certainly like, if it's not number 1, it's like 1.1. So cleanliness is obviously very important, but they're each important in their own right. Comfort, is it going to increase the comfort of the guest stay? Or is it going to increase the comfort for the team too? They have to be able to comfortably do their job and be able to communicate and get the tools that they need. And their job has to be as simple as it can possibly be, which anyone who runs a vacation rental management company knows that can be tricky, especially if you've got a dispersed workforce. You're not all centralized in one area. Communication, vital. You have to obviously get the right information to the right people at the right time. That's obviously the most important thing. But do they understand the message? Did they get the message? Have you followed up? It's one thing, and this used to drive me crazy when I worked in hotels. I'd ask an employee, and I learned this because I got challenged with it when I was a line level employee. A manager would come and ask me, did you follow up with X, Y, and Z for whatever reason? And I would say, well, I emailed them, but I haven't heard back yet. And the manager would come back to me and say, well, email them again, like follow up again and make sure that they are doing the thing that you need them to do, or they have the information you want them to have. And then they confirm back to you. So I carried that into when I became a manager in the hotel world. And that's now carried over into the vacation rental space. And the biggest communication piece, yes, guest communication is important. Those are table stakes today. Employee communication is table stakes. Like if you're doing a bad job of that, then you kind of have to reassess probably your entire business. But owner communication is the one thing that I think really gets underrepresented in the conversations about how to run a successful co-hosting business or vacation rental management business. So communication is key. And then consistency. Again, are you doing the things that you say you're going to do on a consistent basis when nobody's looking? And some might argue that that's discipline, but if you're trying to build a brand and deliver on what you are saying your brand promise is, you've got to have systems in place that allow you to make it happen every single time with every single guest without fail, so that you don't get pulled down into the weeds and then other things fall through the cracks. So there you go.
I didn't expect that. So that was kind of unexpected, but this is a great place to go because owner communication, I think it's underutilized. I think that for most property managers, that's one area that we can all improve in. Number 1, showing our worth. You think about the fact that there are all kinds of automated tools we have out there to communicate. And we could literally set up, just like we do drip campaigns for sales, we could set drip campaigns for our owners, like it's March and we want to let you know that blah, 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 just something that we're doing as a company that shows our value to you. We did that when we signed our contracts. And, we're going to do that with having vacation rentals or, having the number of rentals, having the money come in. That's bottom line important. but showing people that you're thinking about them monthly. I think that's really important too. And I think that's underutilized. What do you guys do for communication with owners? Because I saw in some of the notes that I made for doing this podcast with you that that's one of your strengths. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, great question. So we do a few things. Let me caveat this by saying like everybody's great at owner communication when you're trying to get the contract signed. And then it gets usually passed off to somebody else. And that's where things fall through the cracks. And there will be a million reasons. And everybody will tell you that my business is different and we take great care of our owners, or, we have these hurdles that prevent us from doing the things that we want to do. Like nobody's business is different. We're all trying to do the same. And the way that we look at owner communication is the same way that I hesitate to say the word trained, but certainly in the luxury hotel space, the way that owners are taken care of on a monthly basis is very high touch. There's a high touch service from the guest perspective, and there's a high touch owner service in the hotel world where there's meetings that happen and they've got access to staff and they get great presentations and there's a lot of information that's shared. And there's a very collaborative relationship typically between the owner of a luxury hotel and the management company of a luxury hotel. It's highly collaborative. And that fosters a really great team. So the way that we focus on owner communication is kind of the same way. Obviously, we share monthly statements with the owners. In those statements, we try to give a little preamble about what they're going to see on the statement, and then a little bit of like information about the market. So just like high level, these are the results. This is what we're seeing happening in the market at large. If you're seeing on the news, Airbnb bust and all those things, like this is our take on that. So we try to give a little color on what they might be seeing in the news. And we try to give them some information about the comp set. So we have a competitive set of homes that we define in Wheelhouse, which is our revenue management tool. And we let them know how we're performing against them as well, so that we're kind of keeping ourselves honest and we're not puffing ourselves up when really maybe we're not doing a great job. We want to be accountable to our results and we're transparent about that. So that's a big thing. And then in terms of regular communication with them, you hit the nail on the head. A drip campaign to your owners, just like you would to your mailing list of guests, is really important. So we send out more detailed market reports on a yearly basis. We send out information about new homes that are coming online. Sometimes we have owner specials that are going on that we'll send them information about. So like if you as an owner want to stay at another one of the properties that we manage, that maybe happens to be somewhere else that you don't live, then, we'll give you a certain discount at that house when you stay there. So they'll get a special code for that. We'll send them, kind of anything that comes to mind, even just a quick thank you. Like, thank you for doing business with us. For a couple of years, we didn't do it last year, but for a couple Christmases in a row, we sent them a gift just for being part of the recreation family. So there's a lot of ways that you can take it. You're really just limited by your imagination.
So I'm interested in this that we talked about where you said that you're sending them out information about the market. And here's my question. Here's what I think a lot of property managers would say. Oh my gosh, if I did that, I'd be inundated with questions. Are you inundated with questions about this?
Not really. We do get questions from time to time. And, my take on it is we get questions anyway about how the home is performing and what's going on in the market. So the reason I do it is I try to preempt the questions. So it ultimately saves me some time and energy, but it also shows us as being forthcoming with information, right? And communicative and, all the things that we talked about earlier with the 4 Cs.
Proactive. And I love that. I agree with you. I think that if we sent out emails to our homeowners, communications, letting them know what was happening in the market, like right now, there's a market that I'm aware of where the vacation rentals are quite down. They're down as far as volume. And so what the owner of the property management company did was he lowered pricing across the board. Think about what his homeowners think about that. And they had just built their homeowners up to be many, many hundreds. That had been their campaign. And now I was listening to what had happened in the last 2 weeks and coming out with that communication without sharing the market information. That's a killer.
It is. Yeah. And, think back to the last couple of years, there's been a lot of news/noise about Airbnb, in particular, the changes that they've made on their back end. So whether it's algorithm changes or changes to how your listing shows up or back end changes on the hosting dashboard, things like that. Well, quite frankly, like a lot of this is also learning on the fly, right? You never really know how changes to some of the OTAs that you use are going to affect your business, which is probably an entirely other podcast about should you rely on one OTA?
There's not a podcast for that. The answer to that question is no.
Exactly.
Immediately no.
Exactly. But I would wager that most listeners, the vast majority of their business comes from Airbnb, just like ours. And we're working hard to change that. And any change that they make that could affect our business, I want to get ahead of it and communicate that to the owners. Say, Airbnb made a big update. These are the top 3 or top 5 changes, and this is how we're addressing them. And this is how we expect it to play out. But heads up, like we might have a down few weeks as a result while we kind of learn how they're approaching the business. So we communicate a lot to them.
Okay, let's walk this. Now, you just said something to me that caught my ear. Talking about Airbnb being a very big part of your business as opposed to direct bookings. How are you getting the information from the guest about the guest so that you can market to the guest the next year with, their email addresses and their people that are coming? How are you handling that?
Great question. So there's 2 ways that we do that. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of a company called StayFi, but StayFi, yeah. So we use StayFi in our properties. And for those that don't know, whenever you go to, say, a hotel and you try to log on to their Wi-Fi, they make you put in your email address and, sometimes your name and your room number. Well, that's a way for them, if they don't have your contact information, that's a way for them to get it so that they can market to you. StayFi does the same thing, but for vacation rentals. So you are able to put what's called a captive portal on your Wi-Fi, and the guest types in their email address to get access to the Wi-Fi. It's free. You get their email address that way, and then you can build your list out through that service. The other thing that we do is our property management system that we use is Hostfully. And Hostfully has a great guidebook solution that's sort of an add-on to their PMS service. They also have, it's not a login, but it's almost like a login page to view the guidebook. So you agree to the terms and conditions, which is basically your house rules, by putting your email address in, and then you get access to the guidebook. So we get their email addresses in 2 different ways.
So do the Inhabit property management companies. They all have a solution for that too. I think that if you have a property management system and it doesn't have that, there are lots of other ways to get it, but definitely that's something that the Inhabit companies have that it's really important. There's a lot of ways to get that data. Something really interesting is in Europe. In Europe, WhatsApp is used everywhere. I use it all the time to communicate with my family who lives out of the country. And when I'm staying in Europe, I use it to communicate with the Airbnb. I do a lot of Airbnb in Europe because I find it easy and a lot less expensive than hotels. And so my husband's an ancient Hebrew manuscript researcher. And so we go to a lot of little tiny towns in Europe or even large ones like Berlin, but the Airbnbs there are totally different. Anyway, we use the WhatsApp. And with WhatsApp, they have access to your telephone number if you give that to them, and they can WhatsApp you, period. I wonder if it would be worth that to create some technology that would allow you to take that information and put it somewhere else and use it for marketing. Just saying.
Yeah.
I thought about that last time I was in Europe.
Yeah. With all the AI tools out there right now, I'm sure there's some ingenious young person who understands it all that can ask it to write an app for you.
Well, that's going to be really interesting the way it affects our industry in the next 5 years. There are people that are working really hard on that in our industry. They're brilliant that I'm just totally impressed with. But I love our vendors in this industry. They think out of the box and they really work for you. If you guys know vendors that you love and recommend, I'd love to hear about that too. The ones that really, really work for you, reach out to me on LinkedIn or on any of the social media channels. I'm on all of them. And let me know what you think about your vendors if you have some that you just love, because I think that one of the things about our podcast or my podcast here is that I really do want to help people to grow their vacation rental business. And part of that is finding the right partners. Look, I love Inhabit. Inhabit sponsors this. I'm a partner with them. I love them. I love what they do, but they don't have every single thing that there is out there. So if there's something else, I want to hear about it. Just saying. So Adam, right now, it's right before our season starts. We're about to get really, really busy. Tell me what you're doing in your business. What are the most important things that you're doing to prep?
Yeah, great question. So we have a couple things that we do every year on a cadence. We've got quarterly maintenance that we do at all the houses, which is owner paid, by the way. I get that question all the time, but it's basically a preventative maintenance checklist that we go through every single quarter just to make sure that the general regular cleanings that happen, that, maybe the same person's in the same house all the time and they just stop seeing some things, which is totally normal. It happens, that we're just getting everything zipped up. So we do that every quarter. The other thing is that we do a safety and security audit in every home twice a year. And that just, again, makes sure that the smoke detectors, the batteries are replaced, that there's a fire extinguisher under the sink in the kitchen, that there's a stocked first aid kit under the sink in the kitchen, things like that. So it's a relatively short checklist, about 10 or 12 items. But as we get into busy season, we're just making sure that that gets knocked out at all the houses.
Something I was really surprised about, and I do a lot of vacation rentals here in the US too. One of the things I'm surprised about when I go visiting somewhere is I don't get great directions to the property. How is that possible that we still don't have that? I rented a place for vacation with my sister. We went down to one of these big, tens of thousands of dollars, huge mansions for our whole family. And they didn't have a great direction system that they get. I would expect, like, for that amount of money, you should have technology that would text me and say, hey, Lynell, here's a link to the house. Go there. What do you do for directions to your houses?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the tendency is to think that most people are leaning into like Google Maps directions to get to the house, or leaning into like an Uber driver to find directions. But, we've got a couple of properties that are like, once you know where it is, it's obvious. But there's one I'm thinking of in particular in Seattle, that it's in this neighborhood that it's in the north part of the city. And to get to the house, you have to drive down. It's a side street, but it looks like an alley. And it's at the very end of the alley. So the house is sort of like in this tiny enclave around a whole bunch of other houses. And it's really tricky, even what I know exactly where it is. And I use Google Maps to get there. And I still miss the turnoff every time. So I took pictures of it and I put it in the guidebook. And we've got multiple messages that go out before check-in. And we send the guidebook out pretty early to people. And we encourage them to look at it right away because it has everything that they need to access the house in there.
I like that guidebook. That's great. And for me, this house was in a neighborhood that had a ton of other houses. And it was like you're talking about. It was kind of hidden away, which is nice for the stay, but it's hard when you're trying to find it.
Built by property managers for property managers. Streamline is a powerful software that gives managers enterprise-level capabilities to drive more revenue and improve operational efficiency. Migrating to Streamline allows property managers to gain functionality while reducing the need for multiple vendors, improving flow by logging into a single system and reducing redundant technology costs. With Streamline, property managers achieve revenue lifts by leveraging our fully fledged communication center, reservations quoting system, revenue management tools, homeowner acquisition CRM, and powerful direct OTA connections. Streamline also has industry-leading trust accounting and report capabilities to give you clarity in an overall company performance. Learn more about Streamline Vacation Rental Software at streamlinevrs.com.
Let me ask you this. What advice would you give to property managers who are looking to grow their business?
Wow, that's the $1 million question. What advice do you have for me?
Surround yourself with people who you trust, you can delegate to so you can grow. That's my number one piece of advice. What's your number one piece?
Yeah, no, that's great. I, kind of facetiously asked the question because I mean, it honestly is the $1 million question. Like,
yeah.
Everybody's struggling with it. I think your advice is actually spot on. And full transparency, this is where we are right now. Like, we're at a stage in our business where we need to spend money that we don't necessarily have. We have it out of cash flow from operations, but it's tricky because every dollar counts. And we're at the stage now where I need to hire some specific positions that can take me out of being in the weeds of running the business every day to be able to then grow the business, right? To meet the people, to set up the programs, to do the things that are going to get us, some more properties. And not just more property. I think that there's also a misnomer here. Growing your business isn't necessarily getting more doors. It's how much money can you get from the doors that you already have? So some of it is like, is our revenue management strategy sound? And do we have appropriate add-ons through the guest stay and the guest booking journey that drive more revenue to the company? So these are things that I have to think about, that I do think about a lot. So I know that not everybody is going to be in the stage where they can do that. where they can hire people to do the things that they either don't want to do or aren't good at doing. So honestly, I would just say this, like I've been personally been grinding it out for almost 3 years with this company, wearing 90% of the hats. And I jump onto Fiverr and Thumbtack and Upwork when I can to hire somebody for a very specific need project that is like very defined, a certain amount of money. And I know that it's going to have a good ROI, and I do it, and then we move on. And that's been our world for the last, 3 years. And we're finally at the stage now where we can bring people on.
It's so scary because you're responsible for that person and for keeping them hired. But I will tell you this, one of the biggest pieces of advice I've heard on this show, because I'm about to ask you this question, what would you do differently? Looking back over your shoulder, because these are very successful people, just like you. You've been very successful at what you're doing. What would you do differently? And many of them have said, I would have hired someone sooner. But when you're where you are, Adam, at this place in your business, and where I am at this place in our nonprofit is the same place. We know we have to have that main person who can take over a lot of what we're doing so that we can do the actual growth of the business, or we can assign to them those things that we need to grow the business. But it's such a big bite out of our revenue and our profitability that we hesitate and we wait. And so I try to keep in mind what people have said there and balance that against my ability to handle the responsibility of paying that person every month.
Yeah. And in some cases, you're paying them and not paying yourself.
Absolutely. And that is the case for me right now.
Yeah. Been there.
Yeah. So
For
I'm
sure.
with you. Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, what I would add on to that is it's very wasteful to hire somebody to do, whether it's a long-term job or just a project like a gig worker that somebody that you need something specific on a Fiverr, Upwork, whatever. If you don't really know what you need them to do, it's super wasteful and it's frustrating for everybody. So what I would do differently, I would do what you just said, but I also would have spent more time trying to figure out, what are we trying to do here? Like, what kind of a vacation rental property management company are we? What is our market? What kind of homes and owners are we trying to serve? What markets do we want to be in? And then what's the guest experience that we're trying to craft out there? You have to be very deliberate. This is not a fishing net, catch whatever you get kind of a business. The riches are in the niches, as they say.
I've never heard that. I love that. Oh, I want you to say that again because it sticks. The riches are in the niches, and you're talking about in the little things that you do.
Yeah. And also, like, rather than being an inch deep and a mile wide, like, especially when you're just starting out, it's very hard to turn down homes and businesses. And we fell into this trap. We took just about anything out of the gate because we needed proof of concept and we needed money coming into the company. But very quickly, we got disciplined about what kind of owner we wanted to work with and what kind of home we wanted to represent. And there's a million things you could focus on. You could do downtown condos. You could do big homes in the country. You could do vacation homes on the water in one specific area. Like, you can be very narrowly focused on the type of property you're going to do. But when you do that work, and you might need to hire someone temporarily to help you figure those things out, to ask you the right questions. But once you do, then you know what you're going after and you can find the people to help you get to where you want to go. If you've got a message for everybody, then nobody listens. You got to be very targeted.
I like that. If you've got a message for everyone, then nobody listens. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. So tell me your favorite guest story or owner story. You could choose.
Wow. Does it have to be positive?
No, it doesn't. It just has to be interesting.
Honestly, I will never, and I'm going back to my hotel days here. We didn't talk too much about my background, but I came up through primarily Fairmont Hotels, almost 20 years with them, and then St. Regis after that. And look, there's been a lot of positive experiences and making great guest experiences. And, over the years, there's so many of them, you kind of forget about them. But I remember very vividly when I was working in San Francisco, the Fairmont San Francisco, I was the director of front office at the time. This is 10 lifetimes ago. And we just had this one in particular group that was a very difficult, large group in the hotel to manage. And it was a new meeting planning company. Those times when there's just like, nothing can possibly go right. The stars align in the wrong way. And like, you can't help yourself. You have to laugh. Like, it becomes comedic at how badly things end up going. Anyway, this was that experience over the course of a couple of days working with this group. And as the director of front office at a hotel, you are ultimately the one taking the shots for everybody else. And I got hauled out into the middle of the lobby and I got surrounded by all the meeting planners in this group and basically read the riot act about all the things that went wrong and how we ruined their company and ruined their experience for their guests and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that was, you got to take your lumps, and not an easy experience to go through. But I'll say this, that made me more resilient in the long run. And that's the kind of thing, those types of experiences, because, there were several along the way, along the path. Those are the things that helped me get to the point today that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where I'm now proactive in my communication and preemptive in my communication, and try to give people as much information as I have, and they can understand my decision-making process, or if it's something that affects them and their home or their business, why we did the things that we're going to do, or, hey, this is what I'm thinking. It may materially affect you. Do you agree with this, perspective and this course of action? So I guess that, ultimately, standing in the lobby getting yelled at the Fairmont San Francisco helped me develop one of the 4 C's in recreation as we sit here today.
That's really interesting because you reminded me of something that happened to me. My background is programming. At the beginning, I was programming for a very large e-commerce company. We were pulling fiber optics at the time. And it was like my second month. And I'm awed at this big manufacturing organization. It's really cool. But I was working on the database and I accidentally deleted part of the database all by myself. And I was very upset about it. I cried. I was young. I cried. I was very upset that I had made such a terrible mistake. It really upset me so badly. And everybody tried to comfort me. But when I went to my supervisor, and of course that came up, I remember his name was Steve, and he was cool, calm, and collected, kind of like Steve Schwab. Steve Schwab reminds me of him in a lot of ways. They're very smart. They're thoughtful. He was very thoughtful. And he looked across the desk at me. He said, Lynell, he said, I know this was a big deal to you. He said, but did anyone die? And I thought, what do you mean, did anybody die? I'm thinking to myself, why is he asking me this? And I said, no. He said, then it can be fixed. Mm-hmm. And in a manufacturing environment, there are mistakes that are made that people actually can die from. And so he's trying to put this in perspective for me. And I can't tell you, I probably used that example a dozen times over my career. When something like you're talking about happens, everything goes wrong in just the wrong way, but nobody died. And you learn from those mistakes. I never did a delete statement without an argument next to it again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's so true. And it's hard in the moment to see the benefit that you're going to get from it. But I think at the end of the day, it just builds resilience. And I actually heard this quote the other day, education, sure, it's important. But if you don't go through difficult times, you can't build that resilience. And success in a business is built on being able to navigate difficult times. And you can do that by having resilience.
And failing. You never learn without failure. We just don't. And I just want to say, this has been memorable. I won't forget Riches Are in the Niches because it's a really easy way to remember. Guys, don't forget that your add-ons and those little things that you do to increase your revenue make a difference to your bottom line. And everybody's searching for those add-ons and those things that people will buy. And so Riches in the Niches is really, I just could do a whole show on Riches in the Niches.
You sure could. Yeah. Take it and run with it.
I want to get Scott Leggett on it. I want to talk to him, not about government advocacy, which he's really good at, but also talk about Riches in the Niches. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share with our vacation rental managers about how to grow, or anything you want to share with them before we end?
Look, all I would say is that this is a pretty incredible community. And the thing that makes it special, I think what's different than a lot of other industries, is that we're a community of people that just want to help each other. So if anyone has questions or needs advice or just has an idea and they want a sounding board to bounce it off of, you can feel free to reach out to me anytime.
So how would they find you if they want to reach out to you?
Best place is on our website, recreationstays.com. You can just hit the contact us button from there and the email comes right to my inbox.
So just a reminder that Adam has built this from scratch. He's been incredibly successful and he's 3 years into it, guys. So if you're looking to start something or you have questions, he really is a great resource for how to make things successful and work. Thank you, Adam, so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
It was great.
This episode of How We Grow is brought to you by Streamline. To find out more about how Streamline can help grow your vacation rental business, visit streamlinevrs.com. Make sure to search for How We Grow in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.